Buffalo After Dark is proud to recommend I Barbecue for You. Pre-orders are suggested by calling 716-880-7667. I Barbecue for You, Buffalo's new barbecue destination.
Just move the coyotes. Don't do another expansion.
Right? It never crossed my mind. So somebody called the house when I was out mowing the grass.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
Holy shit, your face is like purple.
Are you still up? Now in their fifth season, it's Buffalo After Dark.
Welcome to Buffalo After Dark, everybody. It is Wednesday, January 15th, and of course, if anyone has stuck around with us, it's kind of funny because the breaking news tag actually showed up right at the beginning of this episode. Well, there's one reason. We've actually survived 200 episodes.
That's all I could say is, my God, 200 damn episodes. And just to think that we just did 100 episodes nearly 3 years ago.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, but then we're averaging, anywhere like 50 to 75 shows a season or something like that. So, I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. And you know what? In a way, this kind of episode is going to be a nice reflection of what we've been able to do for the last 5 years. And to be quite frank, we honestly accomplished a lot, even as a duo.
Yeah. I mean, well, when we started this episode, or when we started this show, actually, I mean, we never thought we'd actually be still doing it 5 years later. It's like, all right, something a little bit fun and, a little something different. And I mean, and of course, we had done podcasting before, and anyone who's actually followed us even before we even launched Horns and Hooves Entertainment, I mean, of course, we had our former Buffalo Sabres Blue and Gold Mafia site. We had, of course, NHL Fans 365. We had many other platforms that we actually worked with, but it got to the point where we decided, hey, we're going to actually ditch some of our other platforms. We're actually going to own our own platform finally. So to, of course, the people that we used to do stuff for that let us run everything, but then decided to basically be like, oh, we don't need you now after you got us all these people. Screw you guys. So that's the way I look at it. But no, we're looking back at it. It's been a lot of fun to do it. So, I mean, here we are, 200 episodes later, and we're still going 5 years later. So, it's a big
In a way,
plus.
like I said, it's kind of nuts in a way because we did not think we were going to survive 200 episodes. And you know what? I can't wait till 300 because at the end of that point, we would have accomplished so much on the show already. Like, it's not even funny. Like, we've met friends, we've met new people throughout our journey, and we got to meet former NHL players, former NFL players, UFC players, etc. We did a lot, and sure, we're not like WGR, or we're not like, a big podcast. We're just two guys with everyday jobs, with families, that just do this because it's a hobby to us, and we do it because we love it, and it's all for fun.
Yeah, 100% right. And we're going to look back on some of our most fun episodes. We're going to look back at some of the trips we've done, and we're going to take a look at all of that. And yes, Trevor Hauer, you're one person that kind of converted me into a Bandits fan. So I will tell you that, yes, I am actually wearing Bandits gear for the first time ever. So I will tell you that. Plus, I own a piece of Highmark Stadium turf now also. So I will say that.
I was going to say, haven't you always been a Bandits fan?
I mean, yes, but last night was actually the first time I ever bought any gear.
What happened last night?
Well, besides knowing I was getting paid today. I mean, I just decided, you know what? I went to a BFLO store, and I will say for anyone, and Bobby's been to the one that I've been to before, out in Williamsville when he's been up here, but one of the things I figured, you know what? Hey, take a ride out there. And I figured, all right, get some stuff because I may have some family at the game this weekend. So I may be going to it. But I figured, you know what? Hey, finally add it to my collection. And then I was like, holy crap, they actually still have Highmark Stadium turf. So I actually bought myself a piece of turf for $30.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I actually have some turf of myself as well. But the one I have is from believe it or not, from the 2019 home opener. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that game against the Bengals with Andy Dalton. I actually have a piece of turf from that game, which is crazy. And it's been
Nice.
sitting in my house for like 5 years now.
Yeah, and it's literally like with where I have it in my place, it's like it works perfect because I have like the fake plant on one of my furniture pieces of furniture or whatever, and then it's like yeah, I have the turf laying right next to it, so it's actually kind of a cool little addition. It adds a little something, so I'm like, all right, this is good, but. It was just time. I'm like, hey, go ahead and get it. Especially since it was the turf that was installed up until 2021. So it was good stuff.
Well, I'm curious, because we're talking about the turf.
Hmm.
How much money did you spend on the turf?
$30.
30?
Yeah,
I paid, at the time I got mine, I paid like 50.
yeah, and I was surprised it was that cheap because I've seen instances where it's gone way more than what I paid for it. So I'm actually really happy I got it for the price that I did.
Right. And the funny thing about this whole thing with turf is that there's a very small window to get these pieces of turf,
Hmm.
and not everybody can get it. But the only thing I think about it is that some of the turf they sell, they turn it into different like house furniture, like a carpet or a mat.
Yeah.
So in a way, I'm a little skeptical on that because there was one I saw maybe a year or two ago
Hmm.
where it was about this like the size of a house mat, and it had a big bison on there, and
Yeah.
it had nothing to do with the Bills. It was just a big bison with some turf on it. So my guess is they probably took the turf from Highmark Stadium and they turned it into what it is now, and just
Yeah.
put their like logo on something on it.
Yeah, more than likely. So, but it actually was interesting because when I got it into my place, it's like before I actually brought it inside. Like one of the first things they actually said is like make sure you shake it out, and there was actually some of the crumb rubber still stuck in it. So I'm like, oh, nice. So it's the real shit.
Yeah, that's definitely something to have for sure that you have to probably take care of, because it's a piece of memorabilia, or better yet, it's a piece of history.
It
So
is.
at least with you and I, we can at least say we both have a piece of Highmark Stadium in our house.
Hmm. Very true. Yeah, exactly. And and then even on top of that, now it's like now I think some of my sports memorabilia is complete in some ways because now I have a piece of the history of the stadium. So I'm like, all right, this is a good thing. So
Absolutely. Now we
yeah,
just wait. Now we play the waiting game for the new one.
yes, which they've actually started putting up more of the roof. That's going to be the overhang for the upper deck at the new stadium. So apparently, here's a crazy thing, and this was on the news earlier today. They actually started doing some sound checks in the new stadium
What do you mean by sound
already.
checks?
They're testing like the early version of the new sound system that's going to go in there.
Yeah. By the way, I actually also read something very interesting about the new stadium as well,
Hmm.
and that is, you know how the design of the roof it has like a barrier on the top of it with a
Yeah.
big gap for the snow to fall in.
Hmm.
Supposedly, I saw a picture of the rendering of the model of when the project first got unveiled. I don't know if you caught it, but on the side end of the roof, there's like gaping holes across the
Hmm.
building where, let's say if it's like a really windy day in Buffalo, for example, and you have trouble with gusts of wind, the one thing that this new stadium is going to have is these barriers. Like if it's a like let's say 20-mile-per-hour wind, right?
Hmm.
And if you have to kick a field goal within 35, 40 yards, then the wind will be reduced and manipulated, and it will keep it in a barrier, and it will kind of
Hmm.
trap the wind from having to go inside the stadium, so it won't cause any problems for any of the kickers in the future.
Yeah, they're doing some interesting stuff with it, and they're actually doing using some different materials, and they're like looking at a lot of different ways to basically kind of manipulate it, like you said. So it's interesting to see that, but also it's interesting that it's going to have the world's largest snow melting system on the roof too. So they're going to make sure that everyone's going to stay comfortable. But the thing that I'm wondering about what's going to happen is I know it's going to be a natural grass field, but I'm wondering if they're going to do like Green Bay does, where it's kind of like I know it's a heated field, but I wonder if they're going to like reinforce it with actual like fake turf like Green Bay does, or if it's just 100% grass. So that'll be the interesting thing to find out what ends up happening. But I'm just glad it's going to be natural grass.
I've actually heard the seats are not heated per se. Like they're going to be body temperature seats. So like if it's a really cold day in Buffalo and it's like 10 degrees outside, the seating pads in the chairs are going to be risen up to the temperature of a person's, like, the body of the temperature. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I were to
Yeah.
sit on the couch for a long period of time, my body will start to get warmed up because of the heating pads inside the chairs. It's the equivalent of, like, if you were to start up your car in the morning
Yeah.
because you don't want to sit inside your car when it's freezing. So it's the same thing.
Right.
So when you sit down, your body temperature is going to start, it's going to be cold at first, but then it's going to get warm as it progresses.
Yeah, and they're also going to have a lot of infrared heat in the stadium at the same time, so they're going to do a lot of different things to make sure that people are staying comfortable, and plus, I mean, roughly 65-70% of everyone in the new stadium is going to be under an overhang, so this way you're not getting necessarily snowed on or anything like that, and that's actually a good thing, especially for the winter games. I mean, when we were in Seattle, which is one of the good moments we'll look back on. I mean, it was like freaking downpouring during part of that game, and we were just standing there looking all dry because we were under the overhang.
Yeah, same thing with me that happened when I went to Philadelphia to see the Eagles game.
Yeah.
It felt the same way until after I left. So
Right.
I've talked about that a handful of times. But
Yeah, or even in Cincinnati when we were in the upper deck under the overhang, where, I mean, it was a cold game, but hey, we were nice and comfy.
it wasn't that bad though, as far as like the
No,
weather.
yeah, that wasn't bad. That was, what, maybe 40-something degrees? It wasn't too bad.
No, it was more like 37, 38 degrees. Like, it was Cincinnati weather in the fall.
Yeah.
That's Cincinnati weather in the autumn.
Yeah.
But as far as like the way the stadium's going to be designed, like, there's a lot of features in the new Bill Stadium. Like, it's not going to be like SoFi Stadium where they have this big grand scheme of things.
Right.
Or another example is the Tennessee Titans with their new stadium. It's going to be below ground, so it's going to be underground technically. Like, you'll get the upper level, but the games are going to be played within below ground. And then the only reason why they're designing it that way is so that in a couple of years, if the time is right, the Titans will have the ability to host the Super Bowl. And I feel like that's like what a lot of teams in the NFL are starting to do, is they're starting to get away from, the traditional outdoor stadium. Like the
Yeah.
Vikings did this, where back in the 70s, during the rainy days of the Purple People Eaters, they used to play outdoors all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And people complained about the cold weather, so they started playing indoors. And then that new glass stained stadium they got a few years ago, US Bank Stadium,
Yeah.
it's completely indoors. There's no barrier of the outside world
Right.
going into the stadium.
Yeah, and I remember when they were building that whole place, and then of course the Arizona Cardinals, they ended up going into a dome stadium within like the last 15 years or so, because Sun Devil Stadium, I mean, there's no way they could literally play outdoors in 100+ degree heat all the time. It was like literally you go there and you're gonna like get fried. So I mean, they made some changes with that too. I know Nashville definitely wants to have a Super Bowl, and that's why their new stadium is being built as an indoor stadium. But I mean, they're also doing some other plans with it where they're going to have like mixed use and different stuff right around it. So it'll be interesting how that whole project turns out. But at the same time, with what they're talking about here, I mean, the current stadium for the Bills, the rumor is that they're actually going to redevelop part of that and make it into an entertainment district. So they may have some hotels and different things finally. And it's interesting because a lot of the people that live near there, they're like, oh yeah, well, there's nothing to do right around the stadium other than the game. But then a lot of people who live right around there are like, oh no, we don't want people staying here after the game. I'm like, then build the stadium downtown if that was the case, but obviously that's not going to happen. So it's like, put something there and make people stay there for a while. And I mean, it's only going to benefit the town of Orchard Park because they're actually going to have people staying there. So it's a good thing. But I actually had a chance to drive by the new stadium, I want to say about 3 weeks ago now. And I mean, that is absolutely massive in terms of how tall that place is. I mean, it is like easily double the height of the current stadium.
Yeah, for sure. But the other thing too that I also saw, I don't know how true it is, but supposedly the Denver Broncos are entertaining the idea of moving south of Denver, rather in downtown Denver where they currently play. And the stadium is only 25 years old. So
Yeah.
there's no need to make any major changes. But the ownership of the Broncos want to get a new stadium, but they want to make it an indoor stadium so they can host the Super Bowl. But the issue is, sorry, the issue with the Broncos is there's two issues. The first one is that if they were to build a new stadium, is it going to be fully retractable in terms of the roof, or is it going to be an open air stadium? Like the new Bill Stadium is open air, no question about that.
Yeah.
But with the Broncos, they have one or two choices. They can either build a new stadium and make it retractable, or put a new roof on Empire Field or whatever. Or if you decide not to do the stadium, you can always do that apartment complex thing that what Buffalo's trying to apparently do, or Tennessee for that matter. So really, a handful of teams I feel like are taking an advantage of the land that they have because considering it would be their property. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
the Islanders are doing that right now with UBS Arena. You have the building, but they're trying to build an apartment complex to make it easier for fans to get to the games.
Yeah, and there's going to be more and more of that probably as time goes on with some new renovation projects or new arenas or stadiums that are going to happen. I mean, look at Philadelphia; they're getting a new arena, and they just sunk $400 million to renovate the Wells Fargo Center. And originally, what their plan was is that they were going to build a basketball-only arena for the 76ers because the 76ers had to pay rent to the Flyers to actually play in that building. But now they're actually going to do it as a joint venture, and I guess they resolved some issue with it. So now they're going to build a new arena right near the Wells Fargo Center, and they're going to stay in South Philly. So hey, good for them on working it out.
I'm pretty sure the people who own the Flyers are the same people who own the Sixers. I'm just guessing. I
They're
truly
not.
don't know.
Yeah,
They're not owned by the same people?
Nope. No, Comcast owns the Flyers.
Comcast. Okay, that makes sense because, Comcast is a big Cablevision provider.
Mhm.
It's the equivalent of James Dolan. He owns
Yeah.
Cablevision, but he also owns the Rangers and the Knicks. But he makes a shitload of money out of
Yeah.
both of them.
And you want to know who owns Comcast?
I'm not sure who.
NBC.
Oh, great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, the network. Yeah, Comcast and Xfinity are a division of NBC Universal.
Well, that's nice. So
Yeah.
the team is owned by a bunch of raging liberals.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and apparently it was so bad with the 76ers playing in the Wells Fargo Center at one time a few years ago that they actually almost refused to put the Wells Fargo Center name on there, but they were contractually obligated to do so. So they basically shrunk it to where you could barely see it on the court. And that was one of the reasons why they wanted their own building so they could control their own stuff. But apparently, I guess they resolved whatever issue was going on, and they're going to be partners in the new building, and I guess they're not going to have to shell out as much money or whatever, or they're going to actually get a cut of the overall profits or something now.
Absolutely. By the way, we have some breaking news out of Buffalo. Ryan McLeod has just scored a hat trick.
Holy shit, he actually did something?
Yes. He scored 3 fucking goals against the Carolina Hurricanes of all teams.
So you're telling me, and this is funny because we're doing episode 200 right now, the Sabres are actually doing something tonight. And that's actually, they're winning.
Yeah, and they're about to beat the Hurricanes 4-2.
Wow.
Right?
Damn. And it's funny because how many times have we been live and the Sabres absolutely tanked, and yet here we are on this momentous occasion of 200 episodes and are actually winning.
Yep, this is actually his 10th goal of the season. This is the first ever career hat trick for Ryan McLeod.
Wow.
Good for him, man.
Good stuff, yeah. Wonder if Lindy Ruff lit a fire under their ass after he totally destroyed them all in the press conference the other night.
Honestly, it was fucking deserved.
Yeah, 100%. And he was right. They're soft as hell and they're not doing anything and they're absolutely an embarrassment.
I mean, I know Carolina has their fair share of flaws too with goaltending,
Mhm.
but Buffalo just completely out-hustled the Canes. They out-muscled them. They outscored them. They outmatched them. They out-hit them. They did everything in their power. They beat the Canes and dominated at full force. And the
Right.
one fucking episode that, by some coincidence, we end up doing, they actually win.
Yeah. That is amazing.
And you know what's very odd about this game too? This game, it's 8:30 right now as we speak, right?
Yeah, they started at
Normally-
like 6 p.m.
Exactly. Wait, why? Why was the game at 6 o'clock?
Yeah, it makes no sense. Because usually I turn on like 7 p.m. and usually after we wrap up the show, I'm watching a little bit of the end or seeing the post game. But yeah, I think that the Sabres game's already almost over. It's unheard of.
Yeah, they just won, so there you go.
Beautiful. Well, hey, good win. They needed
Yeah.
it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then I believe there's one more going on tonight, and both of the games are on TNT. It's Edmonton and Minnesota coming up.
Okay. So, not a bad contest there.
Yeah, that's coming up right now as we speak. Because the Sabres game is at 6, the Wild game is at 8:30. Like, good timing though on Buffalo's end at that point.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So, yeah, thinking about it, let's talk a little bit about what's coming up this weekend because I know it's going to be a huge matchup, and it is the matchup that the country has been waiting for. The Ravens come into the Bills' house, and right now, the weather is looking like possible single digits and snow.
Well, things are changing very rapidly as the days go by. And I'm not going to sit here and say this is an easy win because I will never say that about a playoff game in my life. I always say, I hope they could do it or I think they could do it. It's never a cocky attitude. Because let me say something. As far as this game's going, Baltimore Ravens fans, honestly, in my humble opinion about them, two things. Chill out, enjoy the ride, and do us all a favor, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, really.
Literally, just, I am telling you, Ravens flock, shut the fuck up. Because all you're doing is making an ass out of yourself. All you say is, oh, this is an easy win for the Ravens, and, oh, you have Lamar, how are you going to stop Derrick Henry, and things like that. I'm like, regular season doesn't mean shit at this point.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean anything. And as you know, I was in Baltimore at that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, week
I
4.
was there. Yeah, I was there in Baltimore when that game took place. And I'm just saying to myself, are people really championing the fucking regular season for a playoff game? That's not even close to the same.
Right. Yeah, the playoffs are a whole different animal, and it's like at that point, who gives a crap about the regular season? The regular season doesn't matter at that point once you're in the playoffs. It's basically win and move on, lose and you're out. And obviously Minnesota found that out the hard way when they got their ass handed to them from against LA this past Monday night.
Oh, yeah. And you know what, too? What I really like is the utter disrespect that the Bills have been getting throughout the entire week.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's like, oh, Lamar Jackson is the MVP. Oh, Derrick Henry's going to run all over them. Oh, the Bills can't do shit. I'm like, well, first off, week 4, the Bills were completely decimated, and they're actually even lucky they survived that game. On top of it, we didn't even have our defense really at all. We were playing like third-string defense.
Quite literally. No Matt Milano, no Terrell Bernard, no Taron Johnson.
Yeah, I think Hamlin was even out. Shakir was out.
Yeah, Shakir was out. Hamlin, I believe, was out. Von Miller just served his first game of the 4-game suspension from earlier this year.
Yeah.
And Josh Allen wasn't even fully healthy.
Yeah, and Coleman, I think, was injured also on the offensive side.
So, I don't understand why Ravens fans are championing this game as if they just automatically won. You have to play the games to win the game. You have to play them.
Right.
It's like, it'd be like saying, remember when the Patriots went 18-0 and they lost the Super Bowl?
Yeah, that was great.
That's what this feels like to me.
Wasn't that when they lost against the Giants of all teams?
The first time.
Yeah.
But the point is that every single day since Monday, every single day from the Baltimore Ravens perspectively has been nothing but bulletin board material.
It seriously has. And on top of it, how about some of the Baltimore media disrespecting the Buffalo crowd here and some of the comments that came out? It's like, seriously, Baltimore media, do you guys have like a death wish or something? Or like, what's the deal?
You know the concept about that story, by the way?
Well, I know there is like a little bit back and forth with it, but yeah, fill us in.
Well, do you want me to tell you the story?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, do you know the name Jerry Coleman?
Yeah, he's a dumbass.
Yes, we know this, but do you know the backstory behind them?
Well, there is some shit that he ended up starting a while back and then decided to go ahead and come back and try to rub it in everyone's face again.
Yeah, so he had the audacity, I want to say during the pandemic in 2020, he made a comment, I believe it was in an interview in the local radio station in Baltimore, and I don't remember if this was before the playoffs or if this was, during the 2019 season or whatever. I don't know. It was one of those 2 years. I want to say it was before the playoffs. And Jerry Coleman made a comment about the city of Buffalo, which I think is completely unprofessional and completely disrespectful. He said that the city of Buffalo in general is the city of losers. And he said that Bill's Mafia, or Del Reed, as he was saying, was Del Reed, this guy's a fucking clown. And then he had the audacity to say that Bill's Mafia is a joke, just as a name a whole. And then had the audacity to say that Buffalo is the city of losers. That right there is bulletin board material.
Yeah. And actually, shout out to Del Reed at 26 Shirts, because them and my friend's store Pop Party are actually working together now on some different things. So good to see them doing some stuff together. Which, of course, if you guys are looking for Bill stuff, Pop Party has 3 locations. So support local business, and actually, if you go there, you're cashing out on stuff I built. So you're supporting me in a sense. You keep me working a side gig.
Yep.
So
continuing with my story is Jerry Coleman, after he made those narcissistic, entitled, arrogant comments about Buffalo, and I took that to heart because that was a really shitty thing for him to say. And then when his mother passed away from Alzheimer's disease, Bill's Mafia, in response, donated hundreds, if not tens of thousands of dollars to, I believe it was his private charity for Alzheimer's research. And he was like, "Oh, I'm so grateful to Bill's Mafia, this like that." And the same thing happened when Lamar Jackson in the playoffs a few years ago, I think it was his knee, he got injured, and they wished him a speedy recovery by saying, here's some money from the Bills Mafia.
Yeah.
And Lamar was very grateful about that. I'll put it in that perspectively. But Jerry Coleman decided to cry crocodile tears about all this, and he says, "Bills Mafia, I love you guys. You guys are so breastful," things like that. And then this fucking cunt decides, just a few days ago, it was on Monday afternoon, talks to John Harbaugh, and he tells him to his face what exactly he said. And he said, I think still Buffalo is the city of losers. I'm just stating a fact. Instead of stopping him and saying, Jerry, that's not appropriate. I don't want to talk about Bills Mafia like that. They're great fans. Let's keep them out of your mouth, all right? It's disrespectful. So instead of that, Harbaugh is listening to this, and he's just like, go on. And then he's listening, and he's trying to get the details out. And all the other reporters were laughing with Coleman. And Harbaugh just kind of had that chuckle smile where he's like, "Listen, Bill's Mafia, they're great and all that." See, right there to me is bulletin board material. Because, once again, as if I feel like the Ravens do this every fucking year.
Yeah.
And this is not even a Buffalo thing, mind you. This is for any team they play in the playoffs. They get so cocky and so entitled and so narcissistically arrogant to the core that they are asking to get the shit kicked out of them every year. They, in a way, remind me of the Pittsburgh Steelers with how they remind me of how Tomlin runs the Steelers. He lets all the shitheads run the clown show, and yet Tomlin just sits on his ass and does nothing about it. Harbaugh is doing the same thing here.
Yeah, he took the bait.
Yeah, he did. And then just recently, it's funny too because more bulletin board material came out, and Roquan Smith made a very interesting comment about the Bills. He said, quote, "I think it's going to be very simple for us. We just got to stick to who we are as a group."
Right.
So, what do you mean by that, Roquan? You mean beating backups that the Bills had at the time?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, and here's what Baltimore, I think, is thinking. They're like, "Oh, yeah, we're just going to run all over the Bills, and we're just going to have our way." But here's what you got to remember. The Bills are the only team legitimately that beat the Kansas City Chiefs during the entire season.
And the Detroit Lions.
And the Detroit Lions. The 2 toughest teams in the entire league. And the Bills are the only team that beat them. And I don't even count Denver winning against the Chiefs because they were playing like the 4th string starters. So to me, Kansas City just laid down purposely so we could beat Denver in round 1. But it's like they didn't even play like anybody that was like 1st string on the Chiefs for that game.
That's what it sounds like to me, at least. But I just don't care with how I like the Ravens as a team, but I don't like their fans. I think their fans are very cocky, and I don't like that. You
Yeah.
know, with any team really. I don't like that with Chiefs fans, even though they're really annoying. I hate that with Jets fans and Patriots fans. Dolphins fans act like this. But I think though the Ravens, as good as they are on paper, they need to shut the fuck up. Because all they're doing is putting a target on their back. And then you have, of course, the media just stroking a giant dick in Lamar's mouth. And it's
Yeah.
just like, it just keeps going and going and going. And it's more of like, oh, this is going to be the easiest win for the Ravens. You know, this is the
Right.
biggest thing. Little things like that. To the point now where the Ravens are now a 1.5 favorites in the betting odds. And now I don't bet on games, but 1.5 favorites against the Bills. Meanwhile, the weather could potentially make an impact.
Yeah, it very well could. And actually, one of the local pizza places around here is actually, they have a little special going on for Sunday. If you pre-order, and this is called Pesci's Pizza out in Williamsville, New York. So it's actually same plaza where that BFLO store is that you went to. They have a little special where if you order pizza for the game and the Bills lose, you get your money back.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so they're trying to bet, or basically it's like, okay, well, if you win, you pay. If you lose, we pay you. So,
And like I said, I just think that, I'm looking forward to the game in general as far
Yeah.
as this, like the hype around it. But I think people would have to acknowledge that the Bills had a great season of their own.
yeah,
But I think the way that the media is acting is so disrespectful to the point where they don't even give Buffalo any credit because of the amount of blowjobs that Lamar Jackson gets. It's just incredibly annoying.
yeah,
And I truly don't understand that. Like, how is it that one team just beat the Steelers can magically beat the Bills? And I'm not saying they can't.
hmm
They can. But at the same time, this isn't Orchard Park. This is not Baltimore.
right, 100%. And on top of it, we have everybody healthy finally, which is not what we had early in the season. And on top of it, how about the media where they're saying, oh, well, Miami and the New York Jets are going to be the top two teams in the AFC East?
Oh, yeah, that totally worked
Yeah,
out.
yeah, exactly. Hey, and Tyler Tarabocia, if you're listening, guess what? 2-0-5 in the playoffs. He's never even tasted it, so fuck you off.
Yeah, quite literally.
Yeah,
And-
yeah, his whole thing. Josh Allen is a fraud in the playoffs. I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, quite
He's
literally.
actually played in the playoff games and won. What's Tua done? Oh yeah, Josh Allen's your daddy, bitch.
Yeah, not for nothing. Not for nothing. Do you think, with the amount of shit that's being said by the Ravens in general, or just the fans, do you think that they're scared to play Buffalo right now?
They
Or do you think that,
probably are to an extent.
yeah, I feel like I'm more convinced as time goes on. I don't hear anything about the Bills saying, oh, they're more just talking about like, oh, we just have to do this. We have to try our best to contain Lamar Jackson.
Mhm.
They're not going out saying, oh, we're simply have to play our game. Like,
No, they're staying quiet. They're just like, we already started prep right after we won.
quite literally. See, this is why I respect McDermott. As much as I'm not a fan of him in terms of how certain games he's coached in the
Mhm.
last like 8 years or whatever,
Yeah,
especially in the last couple of years. But one thing McDermott does is that he keeps his players focused,
Yeah.
even though that sometimes the worst of the worst comes out. Especially like when they have the worst luck, a few years ago against Cincinnati or against, Kansas City going back to last year.
yeah,
Little things like that. I feel like that when something like this comes up, it's always like reverse psychology. And I think as a team, they've really grown to say, okay, we want to be humble. We want to win the Super Bowl this year. But if we're going to do it, we have to keep our heads high, push forward, and just focus on them. Because now Ravens fans are coming out and they're saying, oh, how are you going to stop Derrick Henry? How are you going to stop Lamar Jackson? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? So it's like, okay, it's like you're acting like those two guys are your entire team.
right. And here's the thing: the Bills, have actually played more as a team this year versus being individuals in the past. That's a big difference. And plus, Deion Dawkins now has a chip on his shoulder because of how he got snubbed for basically like the All Pros. So it's like, oh, there you go. And even he's at this point is like, we got work to do.
Yeah, and the Ravens have what, 6 Pro Bowlers this year, and the
Yeah.
Bills only have 1.
Yeah, exactly.
How does that make any sense?
Right. Yeah, so the Bills are getting snubbed in a lot of ways. And you know what? Good. Let it be a chip on their shoulder because they're going to shut everybody up at the time that everything's done. Hopefully.
Hope so. But then again, the Ravens are not completely healthy. They don't. There's a very strong chance of this, by the way. There's a very strong chance that Zay Flowers is not going to play Sunday. And you want to know how I know this? Is because they reclaimed Deontay Johnson off of waivers today.
Yeah, what does that tell you? That means they're hurting.
It tells me right there that Zay Flowers, one of their best weapons on the Baltimore Ravens, and he's the only wide receiver to ever play for the Ravens to ever be selected to the Pro Bowl. Good for him. But aside from that, though, he's one of their best weapons. And I'm just saying, like, the audacity that these fuckers have is just, it blows my mind. Because
It does.
everybody, like, throughout the entire year, everybody was talking about Lamar, you know, in the MVP race and all that, but they never talked this down to the Bills since the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
It's fucking disgusting.
Right. And notice how everyone's saying that Lamar should be MVP this year based on his stats, but yet last year, it wasn't about stats when Josh Allen lost the MVP vote to Lamar Jackson. It was like, he was more valuable. I'm like, you can't have it both ways.
You really can't. I mean, you can't argue with these people because it's like the Ravens themselves, like Ravens fans are in this, I feel like, as a human being, I feel like they're in this insecurity bubble. You know what I mean? Like, you could say to them, oh, look, Matt Milano slipped when Lamar duked him out. But then, like, when you show them the pick 6 from a few years ago with Taron Johnson taking it to the house against the Ravens, they get so fucking pissed.
Oh, yeah, they do. That's like, it's like, you want to know the biggest way to get a Ravens fan butthurt? Talk to them about that because they will go off.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? There are, like, a lot of casual Ravens fans or bandwagon fans, but then real Ravens fans know that Buffalo's no joke. They know this.
Yeah, exactly. And they know it's going to be a tough test for them. I mean, this is their season on the line, so it's huge. I mean, it's going to honestly be a good playoff weekend. But I was going to see if you noticed one thing about this weekend. You notice how all the head coaches are from the Andy Reid coaching tree?
Yes.
What does that tell you? Oh, by the way, Belichick, you suck because none of your coaches can do a damn thing in this league.
Yeah, but I think, though, what was it? McDermott, D'Amico Ryans?
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me. Obviously, Andy Reid.
Yeah.
Don't tell me the other one. Fuck. John Harbaugh. That's what it was. John Harbaugh was the special teams coordinator for Andy Reid in Philly.
Yep. And, of course, McDermott on the defensive side.
Yeah, so, and again...
D'Amico Ryans, same thing.
Yeah. I'm just looking forward to this game. You know, I just want a good matchup. And I have to have some... And I actually have Chris and Andrew coming over for the game on Sunday.
Nice.
You know, Chris Millman and all that. I have them both come in because Britt's going to be in Massachusetts helping out my sister-in-law move. She's coming back home to Long Island in the beginning of February.
Good stuff.
So she's going up there to help her out.
Very cool. Yeah, so, but either way, they're saving the best game for last for prime time because it is going to be a bloodbath.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Let's talk about the weather of that game because that's been talked about a lot as of late.
Yeah, so apparently as of earlier today, the forecast is 8 degrees and snow.
You know what's really funny? When was that reported? Do you remember?
Well, I know over the last few days, but I definitely saw a repeat of the report today, so...
Okay, so it's really interesting because yesterday it was reported to be 15 degrees, right? It went from 20 to 15
to 8.
Well, no, it goes from 20 to 15 to 8 to 7, then to now, as it's being said of this recording, -3.
Nice. So if you have a wind chill of -3 or whatever, it's like, whoo, good luck, Baltimore. We love these cold games up here.
Oh, yeah, and if you want to put the sugar on the cream, I found out from an insider reporter for the Baltimore Ravens that allegedly, and there's actual footage of this, the Ravens had practice today indoors. And why is that, you ask? It's because John Harbaugh himself said that they wanted to practice outside, but the field turf was too cold and it was too hard on them. So they wanted to go to the practice facility and get warmed up.
Oh wow! So they want to use Club Med as an excuse.
Yeah, right here. So the Ravens practice indoors today because their outdoor field is frozen.
Oh wow! So you're not going to prepare for the frozen field here?
What the fuck do you think this is going to happen, Baltimore? Did you just think, oh, it's frozen in Baltimore? No shit.
Maybe you should practice on the frozen field and get used to it.
Fucking pussies.
Yeah, exactly.
Quite literally, the Bills literally walk on ice. Like if there's Jesus Christ walking on water.
Right. We're used to the cold. In fact, and actually our friend Brad from Kentucky actually jumps in the chat and he mentioned our season is on the line too. And it's like, he's 100% right. We're going to be ready for it. Yeah, both teams are. So we're going to be ready for it. And we've played on a frozen field plenty of times. We know what that's like.
Yeah, you know what though, to be honest with you, I also read a stat today that said that Lamar Jackson has never played in a game colder than 27 degrees. And for Derrick Henry, 22.
Well, they're going to get their first-hand taste of it because we embrace the cold up here.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm pretty sure the Bills practice outside all the time.
Yeah, we have an outside field. We also have the indoor practice facility, but we have that outdoor field. And I can guarantee you one thing, they're going to be doing some outdoor practices because that's one way that they will get ready for cold weather games. They'll practice outside.
Yeah, I just find it hilarious that how the Ravens are act so tough on social media and in the media outlet in general, and yet you get one piece of information from practice, and it's like, oh, we're practicing indoors because our turf is frozen. Bitch, get your ass outside and practice in the frozen cold. Because if you think it's... Let me say something. As far as the temperature of that game, it is almost in a way sacrilegious that the Ravens are using that as an excuse to not practice in the cold. Like, bitch, do you not realize you're going to Orchard Park where it's supposed to be negative fucking 3 in Orchard Park on a Sunday night?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And last time something like that happened, look what happened when the Miami Dolphins ended up having to play in Kansas City when it was like minus 10 or whatever, and they got their ass handed to them because, oh, we don't want to practice in the cold.
Yeah, maybe Mike McDaniel was such a shithead about the whole "I wish it were colder" T-shirt a few years ago. Yeah. Maybe they wouldn't be complaining about it. I just find it fun, and again, and I'll say it one more time, and then we can move on to something else. I just find it interesting that all these teams, like the Dolphins and the Ravens, they always talk a big game when it comes to the weather.
Yeah.
But yet, their repercussions suck. Like, genuinely think about that. The Dolphins said, "I wish it were colder." They didn't want to go. So I remember one game, I think it was a year ago, when the Dolphins were in, I think, LA. They were playing the Chargers. And I remember it was a Monday night game, and they were getting ready to play the Bills. I think that Saturday for the division lead. So I remember the Dolphins brought in these big-ass, like, heaters onto their bench.
Yeah.
And I'm saying to myself, SoFi's not even an outdoor stadium. Like, yeah, it has an open gap, but LA cool weather is like 60 degrees in California.
Right.
Like, compare that to, like, Buffalo. Like,
yeah.
Buffalo is much, much colder.
Right. And exactly. And especially this time of year. I mean, I've been to games in December, and it's like, all you gotta do is just prepare well for it. I mean, and it's one of those things. It's an outdoor stadium, so what do? You layer up, wear some, like, warm weather, or wear some cold weather gear, and you're all good. That's all you gotta do.
Yeah, and you know what? The Bills know what to do. So this is nothing new to them.
Yeah, and to them, even when they're on the field, they're like, hey, the cold is just a state of mind. That's all it is.
And you know what? I read an interesting quote from Bud Grant, the late Bud Grant, the head coach of the Vikings in the 70s.
Yeah.
He said, we're going to practice outside in the cold. And the reason will be is we're going to make the cold your friend. Meaning, don't be afraid of the cold. The cold is your home field advantage.
Yeah.
And This is old school gridiron football when the Vikings played
Exactly.
it. Like,
It-
that's the mentality I have for this game.
Yeah, exactly. And that's and the Bills, are going to approach it in that old school mentality. They're like, hey, the cold's our friend in this case. Let's just embrace it and and let's do what we got to do.
Yeah, and you know what, too, is that there's been a lot of philosophies of Greek mythology that's been going around as of late about
Mhm.
the Bills. And there was one that Von Miller made that was a very interesting comment. He said about Terrell Bernard. And Bernard gave a rousing speech to the team today that was centered around Heraclitus, which is the man in the river, which is a poem. If you know
Mhm.
Greek mythology and philosophy, listen to this. He said that Heraclitus, when the man of river, to prepare for the Bills matchup against the Ravens, they said, quote, the man gets in the river once, and the next time he gets in the river, it's not the same man, and it's not the same river. The past is the past.
100% right.
And this is a really, really, really cool philosophy for the Buffalo Bills.
It is. It is. Or think about it this way: Mac Hollins is the spirit animal of the Bills when he walks into a stadium barefoot, dressed as Fred Flintstone, which was absolutely hilarious this past weekend.
Mm-hmm. Let's hope he doesn't get frostbite.
He'll be all right. He can deal with it. I mean, the way he was with the victory speech is like, hey, welcome to the playoffs, and you know what? If you smoke them, that whole deal. So smoke them if you got them. So that's what he ended up saying.
Yeah, I'm just convinced at this point, before we move on, I'm just convinced at this point that even though they won't fully say it, I'm convinced that the Ravens fans are really scared to play the Bills on Sunday. Because they know that if Lamar loses again, he's going to be considered a big choke artist.
Yeah. And we've seen what happens to him in big games. I mean, he has choked, but, any game is a totally different game. So it's one of those things. You can't take them lightly whatsoever. You got to be able to just go out there, do your job, and you got to show up on every single play. Every single play is going to mean something in the game.
Right. So, in a comparison, it's not like when the Broncos came in last week during the Super Wild Card. And not to say that Josh Allen isn't a choke artist either. He has choked in the playoffs, and so has Lamar. He's had his fair share as well. But if you compare this coming week to last week, this is not like Bo Nix, where the Broncos had a rookie quarterback. The Bills genuinely had no idea how he was going to be. And the very first play of the game, or at least one of the first 4 or 5 drives.
Yeah, the first series, yeah.
Yeah, first series was a touchdown, and people said, shit, here we go. So I think since then, Denver checked out, and Buffalo just kind of just said, you know what? We need some oil. We'll be fine. And that's what they did. Oil had to be installed into the car, and vroom. They went in, and they put up 31 unanswered points.
Yeah, there you go. James Cook with 120 yards on the ground. So, I mean, he had a great game. I mean, we had, what was it, 180 or we had, we had 220 rushing yards. And that's a way that you get the game easily. If you're pounding the ball on the ground like that, you're going to win 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
And
you know what?
Yeah, and on top of it, our passing game was good too. So, I mean, when you have both aspects of the offense working the way it should, but especially when you're pounding the ball on the ground like that, good things are going to happen. So they knew what to do. They adjusted. And they figured, okay, well, Bo Nix, all right, so you got the first series. You figured something out. And Denver was stupid because they should have never abandoned the long ball, which they did. But at the same time, we're like, all right, we're just going to limit them on the run. And we were very effective with that. But one of the fun plays of the game, and I love this, and a lot of Broncos fans were salty about this. How about when Mac Hollins, they're like, oh yeah, he ran out of bounds and came back in, which you are allowed to do as long as it's in a reasonable time frame. But how about when he perfectly timed that hit on Mims and fucking leveled him on that
Oh,
return?
yeah, they were so salty. My friend Ricky Langston,
That was
as you
great.
know from the War Room, he's
Oh,
a
he
Broncos fan.
was pissed.
Oh yeah, Ricky was pissed when that game happened, and he was like, he was coming up with excuses for that game, and it's like, listen, I like Ricky, he's a hard ass, I respect that,
Yeah.
but it's like, he's a Broncos fan, and when they were playing the Bills and Mac Hollins played that hit, he's like, oh, where's the flag on that? I'm like, bitch, there was a flag that was not thrown for, offensive interference on Cade,
Yeah.
with Surtain holding him down.
Yeah,
That was never
and that was
called.
an obvious hold.
Yeah, and yet when Mac Hollins does it, oh, that should have been a flag. Yeah, welcome to our world, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and even funnier is basically Mims ends up getting a flag for unsportsmanlike conduct.
For throwing the ball, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very unique, but I'm just looking forward to the game on Sunday. I just want a good game. That's all I want from the Bills. But if I'm being genuinely honest, I think they could do it. Because
Yeah.
if they could beat the Chiefs and the Lions, what's stopping them from beating the Ravens?
Exactly. And the Ravens are not as good as the Chiefs on paper. And they're
Well-
and they're not as good as the Lions on paper either.
No, they're not. But I do think, though, Baltimore is a very good team.
Yeah.
I just don't understand the hype around Lamar and the Ravens all of a sudden. I just don't see it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Are they a good team? Absolutely. They're easily one of the top 10 in the league. And they're in the playoffs for a reason. They know how to play games. But
Yeah.
at the same time, any week is going to be different, and you have to prepare differently for every single contest that you're in. And what did the Bills do right after we got the win on Sunday? Sean McDermott was in the film room right after the press conference already starting.
Yeah.
So he's
And
not
'cause I
wasting
think-
any time.
No, he's not. And I feel like it's a different. I don't know about you, but do you feel nervous or do you feel calm going into the game?
I'm not super nervous at all, actually, in this one. I'm just like, okay, it's just another week.
Yeah, literally. Like for me, I'm the same way. I'm kind of just naturally just enjoying it. Like, yeah, when Ravens fans make those kinds of comments saying, "Oh, Lamar's gonna beat the shit out of Josh Allen" and all that,
Mhm.
I'm saying to myself, you're basically telling everybody you're terrified. You're trying to put on a brave face, but then you don't really know what to fully expect because you know that if Jackson and Henry both get stopped, which there's a very good chance of happening, now that everybody's healthy,
Yeah,
there's a very good chance that this could happen. And
good.
if you could stop the King and you could stop Lamar, you have that game.
Yeah.
You truly do.
Yeah,
But-
if you can contain Lamar in the pocket, he's not going to do anything.
Or if you contain Derrick Henry on the ground. Because let's face it, the only reason, in my honest opinion, like Derrick Henry's a future Hall of Famer.
Right.
The only reason why I believe that the Ravens brought him in was to take the leverage and the weight off of Lamar. That's it.
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, and it helps. I mean, here you go. You have a Hall of Fame running back that's going to be in at some point. You know, it certainly helps. It gives them another dimension on the offense, which is great. I mean, it boosts their running game. But at the same time, can Henry be contained? Yes, he can. And he has been before.
And you know what, too? He's mortal.
Mm-hmm.
He's mortal.
Yeah.
So he's like any other running back. I'm not gonna no. He's not. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Like I'm not saying he's just another running back. That's not what I'm
Right.
saying. He's a very gifted player.
Yeah,
But here's the thing: you can stop him.
exactly.
So
You
for
just have to
Ravens,
scheme. You have
Yeah,
to scheme
so-
for it.
yeah. So for Ravens fans to say, "Oh, you're gonna lose because of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry," dude, go fuck yourself. How about use Mark Andrews? Use Say Flowers if he's available. How about Nelson Aguilar? Why is it that the defense is never talked about? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like it's always Lamar or Henry.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, either way, this Sunday it's going to be very interesting, and I do think it's going to be a close game. It's not going to be a blowout. I
No.
highly doubt it's going to be a
No.
blowout. But I would say probably a 7-point game is what I'm thinking. I will give the Bills the win. I don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring game either. So I would say probably along the range of like 28-21 is what I'm thinking.
I don't like to do predictions, but I do think they could do it. I'm not a big predictions guy because for one, I don't believe in predictions like that for scores because 90% of the time people come up with crazy shit.
Sure.
Either they're not serious about it or they try their best, but they're usually inaccurate. So I don't give out score predictions. But if I have to do one thing to say, and that is, I think the Bills could do it. I think that if they just play like they did against Denver and
Mhm.
and they just put their foot down,
Yeah.
I think they can overcome the Ravens, but I'm
Mhm.
not going to sugarcoat it and say, yeah, they're totally going to beat them. Because the Ravens have been beaten in the playoffs, but that was a completely different team
Exactly.
at that time.
Exactly. So it'll be a fun one to watch, to say the least. And basically, even Brad mentions real quick before we move on, Lamar and Henry, it's like the Allen Diggs scenario. He's a consistent target, which makes it easier to predict a pass play. So that's a true story. I mean, when you have Henry in there, it makes it a lot easier to determine, hey, this is going to be a running play, and more than likely you're going to use him.
Yeah. So in a way, it's almost like they're predictable. You just have to know how to read it.
Right, exactly. So that's going to be one of the things. That's why they're prepping early for it, which is good. So I like the fact that we're taking it very serious. But with that being said, I know we've been on for almost an hour already. So let's talk about some of the fun things we've had over the last 5 years. I mean, we've had some good guests on the show, and one of the things I know, your cousin, the Steamroller. Matt Frivola was on last season to kick us off, which I mean, I know he's doing well too, and I know he's still fighting in the UFC and all that. So, and plus he's got a little one of his own now, so that's definitely cool since the last time we had him on. But he's definitely one of the guests I can remember. A lot of fun to have him on. Would love to have him on again at some point. And then I wanted to say, remember when we had oh crap, I just lost my train of thought.
You said remember who we had on the show, and you were going to say somebody's name.
Yeah, I totally. Oh, Derek Plant. Remember when we had him on for an hour?
Yes,
That was
he was funny.
hilarious. That was an awesome. He was awesome to have on here, and at the same time, like telling us about some of the old hockey stories and some of the things that would happen. I mean, he was an awesome guest to have on here. So totally. I mean, if the opportunity presents himself again, I mean, totally. He's always welcome back.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, Matty Vervola and Derek Plant. Clint Malarchuk, I think we had 1 year, but that was like in the very beginning.
Yeah, that was like way back. And actually, the
Yeah.
funny thing is I still have his phone number in my phone too.
Yeah, he's in my contacts as well.
Yeah.
I also have, I'm not sure who else I have on my phone, but I have Clint Malarchuk. I have
We had Mike.
Mike.
Wait, no. Who is the former Rangers player we had on?
Oh, Mike Hartman.
Yes.
Yeah, Mike
Yeah,
Hartman.
that goes back a ways. He was a good one to have.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of which, just an update for you guys. I am confirmed and it's official. I will be going to the Ranger game on January 21st at 7 p.m. versus the Ottawa Senators for Road 32, which is the very first one for 2025.
There we go. Yeah, and speaking of Road to 32, we've had some fun ones over the last few years because that's been one of the things you've seen a lot of times when we haven't been on, like we were for earlier in October when we went to Seattle. I mean, we've had some big cities along the way. I mean, and I know you've gone on more of those trips than I have, but just on the ones that the two of us have gone on together, I mean, let's see, Kansas City. We had Cincinnati, we had Seattle this past year, which was our first time out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had you up here last year, so we did that.
Philadelphia.
And then, we did Philadelphia this past summer. I'm probably coming back down this summer again, so we'll probably have another Road to 32 Mets edition or something. So probably have that going on. And then I'm trying to think what else we've done. I mean, we've had some very interesting times with some of those trips, with being able to visit some different cities and all that. And one of the things I look back, going to Kansas City, totally a fun trip. The tailgating was great. I mean, the fans there are really awesome. They love the game just like we do. And then, of course, I remember we ended up scorching that. And then. No, that was actually when you were here for the Cincinnati home opener when we set that guy's lawn on fire with the grill. But
oh yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, I remember that. But no, it was definitely a fun time. And then watching the Kansas City fans be butthurt after the loss that we handed them. And then we had that hour-long conversation with a random Kansas City fan in the parking lot after, and we were told, "Hey, you guys got to leave."
Yeah, I remember.
Because they were closing the lot. Yeah, so
it was definitely one of those trips where we didn't fully know what to expect. Because I think at that time, you said that when we went to Kansas City, that was like your first Bills game that was not in Buffalo.
It was the very first time I've seen a road Bills game, because every single other Bills game up until that time I've seen here.
It's funny too, because I already had pre-game experience, because I've seen them play the Jets a handful of times at MetLife Stadium, and I saw them play 1 year against the Giants in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when the Bills went back-to-back weekends at the Meadowlands. So I got to see the Bills play twice in that time span.
Yeah. And then the thing about it, since that time, then with Kansas City being fun, and we actually got to go to St. Louis, and we experienced a lot of different things there. Going up in the Gateway Arch was fun, and we got to spent some time in the downtown there, and the Budweiser Brewery was a lot of fun also. But then the following year, we ended up taking the road trip to Cincinnati, and this was actually a good time also, and it was one of those things we actually. Kansas City, we didn't stay in the same place. Cincinnati, we did. And I remember I was coming down on the elevator. I was going to come grab something. And I'm like, oh, shit, you guys are in the elevator. It's like, you're like, oh, hey. So that's how we ran into each other when we first got there.
Well, the funny thing about Cincinnati is, I was talking to Britt about this, is looking back on it, Cincinnati, I think, in terms of activity, I felt like there was a lot more to do in Cincinnati than there was in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Because at that time with Kansas City, we really truly didn't have any idea of what to expect. We did see some deer carcasses, which I opened my big mouth about.
And the airport was in the middle of nowhere because that was easily a good 45-minute drive into Kansas City.
Yeah, the only thing I regret not doing on that trip was not going into the city, because that was where a lot of the entertaining stuff was in Kansas City.
And we drove through it. And I mean, on the last day we were there, and yes, we did get barbecue at Arthur Bryant's, which is one of the historic places for barbecue out there. But yeah, I mean, looking back at it, should we have probably spent a little more time in the city? Yeah, it would have been interesting to do that, but it didn't plan out that way. But it's all right.
Yeah, because what's the point of going back? We already did Kansas City.
True. And actually, in hindsight, though, we can say, hey, we did St. Louis as one of the days we were there. So, I mean, so we did get to see some bigger city stuff when we were there. But
absolutely. But I felt in Cincinnati, though, like when we did Cincinnati, I felt that there was a lot more to do there because, we had the Cincinnati Zoo. We were literally in, what was the name of the town when we were staying in?
So we stayed in Covington, Kentucky. So we were
we
were just on the opposite side of the river. But with where Covington is, I mean, it was easy to walk around to different places right there, and we were able to do the same thing in Cincinnati, and literally with everything, we could just walk right across the river, and we're right in downtown Cincinnati, and that's actually what we did for. Well, we had our walk of shame after the loss, but which is about a 20-minute walk from the stadium. But I mean, for us, it actually worked out really well because before the game, we were able to take the shuttle from the hotel, and we went to the Moreland Lager House, and we ended up being able to be close to the ballpark. We were right by the stadium. There's a lot of stuff to do. And even on the last night we were there, same thing. We parked and we were able to walk around downtown Cincinnati and do a bunch of different things. So there was a lot to do. And Cincinnati was actually a fun city. I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it as well. But my favorite thing about Cincinnati was how chill the people were at the game. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the one thing I remember that stood out at the Bengals game was when we got lost trying to find our seats because of how incomparably disruptive that stadium is.
Yeah.
I remember getting so fluttered, and we were all getting fluttered. Let's be honest. We were all getting fluttered, and one of the people I don't remember.
Yeah, one of the ushers actually got us to where we needed to be, and there was no issue with it, which was great. So she was such a sweetheart. Yeah,
she really was.
She was really nice, and even the Cincy fans were really cool about everything too. I mean, they respected the Bills. They gave Rob Jesus shit about being in the Steelers jerseys.
Because Rob's a fucking idiot. That's why he's a fucking idiot. He literally goes into Cincinnati wearing a fucking Steelers jersey.
Yeah. And it was funny because we were having our lunch, and I remember what ended up happening is one of the Cincinnati fans actually came over. There was like a small group. They came over to our table, and they actually shook hands with us like, good luck. Fuck you to Rob. I remember that guy.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I said to Rob, are you sure you don't want to take that jersey off while you're here? He's like, no, man, I'm fully embracing this.
He's like, I'm going to die today.
I told him this. And I said, dude, you're going to get killed today.
Right.
He's like, I don't care.
Right. Well, actually, and then, of course, there was the guy wearing the Cleveland Browns jersey in the stadium. I'm like, oh, God, that's even worse.
I guess in a way it makes sense because we were in Ohio. So it makes perfect sense at that time.
Yeah.
But I just think, on the contrary, when you think about it, it was nice to have Rob on the chat. But, dude, listen, Rob, if you're listening, I love you, man, but you're a fucking idiot, especially with what you did that year.
So, yeah, and then of course Seattle this past October. That was definitely a fun experience, and in the way that was, it was actually a little bit different because that's probably the biggest city we've been to out of all three so far in terms of just with the two of us going together. And I will say, flying into SeaTac, I do not want to go through that airport again anytime soon because that whole place is torn up. But I will say, flying out there, not a bad flight. I mean, it was a long flight. I mean, I had to fly from Buffalo to Detroit and then Detroit to Seattle. And I mean, Buffalo, Detroit, easy. I've done that plenty of times. It's only like an hour-long flight. But going from Detroit to Seattle, when you're in a plane for almost 5 hours, both ways, it's like, okay, it's a little much. But that being said, we got to do a lot of cool things. And I want to say, Deborah, our host with the Airbnb, I mean, she was awesome. That was easily one of the nicest places I think we've had. And just the way that she took care of us, made sure we had stuff, and got us set up with everything. Absolutely, I would stay with at her place again if we were to fly out there at another time. But I would say Seattle had a lot of fun things to do. I mean, where we were staying, we're right by the Starbucks Reserve, which is their huge roastery out there, and you get to have some different types of coffee blends. Of course, Pike Place Market was a lot of fun. Totally enjoyed that, and yes, we did get to see the flying fish, so we got to do that. The Seattle fans were actually pretty cool with us as well. Got to meet Ronald Moore or Ronald Morris, I believe, Randall Morris, and yeah, so we got to meet him. Of course, we got some crap from him also, but he was actually super cool and super chill to take a picture with. And I mean, and it was also fun running into one of my longtime high school friends too, who lives in Colorado, who flew to the game. He's actually out in Denver now, but good time. And then Vancouver, Canada was a lot of fun also. We got to do some really cool things, catch some hockey games. Yes, we were on the Jumbotron at Rogers Arena, which was pretty cool. I still have to find the picture for that at some point or recreate it in a sense, because I do have like a thing I can do with that. But I just have to double check that. But I would say the Seattle Kraken, easily one of the best arenas in the U.S. with Climate Pledge Arena. Just the atmosphere was great and totally loved it. And then even the other things we got to do in downtown Seattle, I mean, we had a lot of fun there and it was a good time. And being in the Pacific Northwest, beautiful country, especially when we had the drive to Vancouver and back.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So before we continue about Seattle, we have another comment. Brian Trainer said, "Congrats on making it to 200, boys."
Yeah, cool. Good stuff, Brian. Hey, glad you're watching as well.
Yeah, so I think generally, though, speaking of Vancouver, I think the thing that really stood out about Vancouver was how wide open the city was. Because it's like, yeah, you're in Canada, which is beautiful, but at the same time, this is the Pacific Northwest. You don't get to go here very often.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I think what really stood out about Vancouver when we were on that trip was all the different stuff we were able to do. For instance, when we went to Stanley Park, we were able to walk around the park. It's not very big, but it was worth it because we were able to go into Stanley Park and we got to see the totem poles. We got to see all of the Vancouver Islands. We got to see everything there at that point. Like Goose Mountain, we got to see. Yeah. Vancouver Island, I believe, was one of them, I think.
Mm-hmm. And you get to see the mountains and everything. And it was a nice, like, I was going to say, like, after we got off the bus that we ended up taking into the park, I mean, it was maybe about a 20-minute walk along the shore of Vancouver Harbor, but it was beautiful. And their city is actually really cool looking. I mean, it's just, there's so many nice things there. And Vancouver, I would love to go back at some point again. It was just a really, really nice city with everything that we had. And yes, and then with Stanley Park, I mean, we went to the Vancouver Lookout, which is a tower, and you had some great views. It was right in the downtown. Of course, on top of that, we went to the Lonsdale Key Market on the opposite side of the harbor over in North Vancouver, which that was a lot of fun, being right by the shipyards and everything. And we had some good lunch over there, got to ride the ferry to and from, and I mean, and they had some celebrations going on. It was right around Halloween, so they had some cool stuff happening, and then on top of it, being able to watch the game in the Rogers Arena, it's not what I say. Is it the best arena in the NHL? No, I mean, there are some things they can do to make it better, but the crowd was absolutely into it, and easily one of the loudest arenas I've been in.
Yeah, no doubt. I feel like any Canadian market in the NHL, the crowd and the atmosphere is always guaranteed to be electric.
Mhm.
Considering there's only 7 Canadian teams in the National Hockey League,
Yeah,
you might as well make adjustments. So I think though there is no doubt in my mind that a Canadian market like Vancouver or Toronto would go bananas specifically for every home game. But I will say Rogers Arena, I think I was not a fan of the seats, not where we were sitting, but how they were designed.
yeah,
Because the seats were so tight. Like I couldn't
it
even
was.
put my ass cheeks.
Yeah, it's like literally my ass was numb after the game. So
Yeah. And the funny thing too is I had to drag Britt with us to the Canucks games. I told her, listen, I'll let you do everything else you want to do. But for this one time, you're coming with us to the Canucks game. I'm not letting
right.
you roam Vancouver by yourself.
Yeah, exactly, and you know, and it actually worked out to be a fun time, and I will say, I mean, one of the things being able to see a Canadian team in a Canadian arena, that was cool. So that was the first time in the NHL I've actually been able to do that. So, so definitely had a ton of fun at that game, and we got to see a really nice win against the Penguins. So that
Yeah.
was cool.
I was
And
going to say, from your perspective, because you live in Western New York, I'm
yeah,
surprised that you've never been to a Leafs game.
I'm not paying $500 for a fucking seat there. Are you kidding me?
Are you serious? Tickets are not 500. What are
Oh,
you talking about?
tickets, yeah, the Toronto Maple Leafs are the most expensive tickets you can buy for any NHL team.
Oh, yeah, I know that. But they're not 500. Ranger tickets, I used to think were 500.
Well, if you want to
Maybe they're
get
the
good seats there, they're not obstructed. I mean, they're up there. But yeah, I just maybe at some point I'll go watch a Leafs game. And I mean, in fact, with where I live now, I'm only like not even an hour and a half from Toronto. But at the same time, it's like, do I really want to go there? It's like I'd almost have to overnight or do something. Maybe I will at some point, but at the same time, I'm like, Toronto, whatever.
Well, in my opinion, I feel like anybody that could go to a Leafs game, I think they could do it. But I also think it depends on the location because I'm
Yeah.
actually trying to find the ticket price for a Leafs game. Because listen, I just put my money and effort to buying tickets to a Ranger game. If
Yeah.
I could do that for a Ranger game, there is no excuse for me to not do one for the Leafs.
Right. Yeah, and maybe at some point I will do that up there and overnight or something. But it's just like one of those. Just like some of the pricing was absolutely insane in terms of what I've seen previously. So that's just one of the big reasons why I've never really done it. But then again, who knows? Maybe I will at some point, and especially now having been in Toronto a lot more the last couple of years. I mean, and knowing. A lot. What I would probably end up doing is stay out in the suburbs, kind of like what we did the last time we were up there, and just ride right into Union Station on the train, and like there you are, you're right in Scotiabank Arena.
Yeah. Wait a minute. You said you want to know something? I'm actually on Game Time right now, not
Yeah.
Ticketmaster because of the taxes and all that.
Mhm.
Game Time for 2 pairs of tickets to the Leafs game tomorrow night against the Devils in section 312, row 18. It's on sale for $10 off, $87 per person.
Okay, so that's not as bad as what they had run before. So that's actually a big plus. I was gonna say randomly, you want to know how much Bills tickets are going right now? If you sit in the lower bowl,
Like $700.
yeah, easily.
Yeah.
Minimum
Okay, here we go.
600.
Yeah, here we go. So if you want to get tickets to the Leafs game against the Ottawa Senators, for example, I'll look it up against Montreal in a second. But just to give you an idea, if you want to go to the Leafs game in section 319, row 19, again, $17 off. It's
Yeah.
$155 per person, 2 people.
Yeah, and that's what I can pay to get a rinkside seat here in Buffalo.
Yeah, here we go. April 12th against Montreal. Now this is where the big prize comes.
That
in.
would be a good matchup. Obviously, that's going to draw in some big bucks.
Well, here you go. This is probably why you got thrown out by the Leafs tickets. Ready? This is why. If you were to go to a Toronto Maple Leafs game in April against the against the Montreal Canadiens, the tickets, it's top 10 percentage value, right?
Mhm.
It's $300 in section 320, row 18, $243 per person.
Yeah, and that's usually what throws me off, especially for the big games.
Yeah, so in my opinion, just based on solely on the ticket pricing,
Mm.
my estimate guess is either all the original 6 teams or against the Canadian rivals. That's probably how I'm viewing this.
Yeah, it could be. So, but at the same time, I won't say never in terms of going there. I mean, would I like to see a game in Toronto at some point? Probably. So who knows? I mean, I may end up doing it. But Montreal is on my list for a game that I would love to see actually in Montreal.
Yeah, you know what it is too is that because I was saying to you when I came up to Toronto during the Bills Cowboys trip, I remember saying to you with Melvin, I said, "Hey, would you want to go to the Leafs game tonight? The Penguins are in town." He said, "Fuck no, I don't want to do that."
Right. Well, plus I know that it was like a shit ton of money to go to it also, but
Well, I didn't know that at the time.
yeah, and that was part of the reason why I'm like, fuck that, I ain't gonna do that. But who knows? Maybe at some point, I'll be wanting to do it, and maybe we do. So it'll
I
be
feel like you
interesting.
owe it to yourself, honestly.
Yeah, probably at some point. I mean, I live close enough to it, anyways. I mean, that's easy enough. Just go up there for the night and whatever, and do that. So
Like I said, I'm going to a Ranger game, and I hardly ever go because
Right.
tickets there are stupid expensive. But I made a commitment to go to a Ranger game.
Yeah.
If I could do that at Madison Square Garden, you could do the same thing at Scotiabank.
yeah, more than likely. I mean, hell, I've done that at PPG Paints Arena a couple times where I've gone to games. So
That's the point. A lot of Leafs fans will travel to Buffalo for the games.
Oh,
but
yeah.
They won't travel at their own home games because they know Sabres tickets are like pennies on the dollar compared to
Oh
the Leafs.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've gone to Leafs games here in Buffalo like plenty of times. I mean, I've done that actually with our good friend Doug. I've gone to a few of them. So it's something where it's like maybe at some point, yeah, take the ride up there and do that. So we'll see. But I have caught. But I will say I have caught 2 games in Pittsburgh down for them. So it is what it is. But coming back to Seattle though, I mean that I would say. If I had to rank like the 3 trips we've been on, I would say, trying to think, it's like Seattle and Cincinnati are very close in terms of what I think we had the most fun with. I mean, we had a ton of stuff to do in Seattle. I think the bonus on what I would give to Seattle in terms of being my favorite trip, I would say likely was just because of the fact that we had Vancouver right there and we were able to do a ton of stuff with that, and certainly that's what I would give the nod to. And actually Brad reminded me in a chat, and I do remember this also. I did go to a Colorado Avalanche game with them a long time ago. I think it's almost 10 years ago now when we went to a game together. So
You went to an Avalanche game?
it was here in Buffalo.
Oh, I thought you meant in Colorado.
No, not in Colorado. No, this is when
Oh,
this was when our friend Brad was actually living here. So
I thought you were talking about like you went to Denver to see the Avalanche.
no,
I would have been like, what the fuck?
right,
You could have told
exactly.
me that. Could have told me that this whole time. You know what's noticed? You know what I've noticed that you didn't talk about with Seattle?
Mhm.
What was one thing we did in Seattle?
Well, besides going to Pike Place Market, we went to the zoo. We of course went to the Bills game, obviously, which
Yes.
that was a lot of fun.
You
We
get
also
warmer.
we went to the Kraken game, so we did that. Got to, of course, spend time in the Space Needle, which that was a lot of fun. Got to do
Yes.
that. Trying to think what else.
You're missing it. I know what it is. But I want
Yeah.
you to see if you can figure it out.
Yeah, you got your newspaper that we were bitching about.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
And then let's see what else. I mean, we spent a ton of time in the downtown. We did the teriyaki, which I mean, we ended up going for the huge walk on that.
No.
We did the Kraken, or not the Kraken, but we did the Seahawks experience right before. We went to T-Mobile Park. We actually went in their team store
Yes.
there, so we did that.
The Seattle Seahawks Stadium tour. That's what I was pointing at.
Yep. And whoever this Brendan Dillinger is like, he's saying show meat. We ain't getting naked on the show. Fuck you.
Who said that?
Some guy named Brendan Dillinger who jumped in a chat. Probably one of those stupid ass bots or something.
Who cares? We're not getting naked.
Yeah,
him.
exactly.
Anyways, so It's hard to say which Road to 32 episode with you involved in. Because it's not just always football. Because we did one for hockey, we did one for baseball, a handful of them actually. We
Mhm.
did the Phillies, we did the Mets when you first came down here again to see City Field. You enjoyed it, and it's kind of become a tradition for you to come down or whatever.
Yeah.
Because my plan in the future is to go to as many ballparks with you as much as possible, even if it's somewhere like Boston, to go to like Fenway Park or something.
Yeah, and Fenway would be a fun place to go to. Definitely in terms of like the historic ballparks. I mean, that would be one. Wrigley would be another one. Just in terms of being historic. I mean, that would be a fun one to go to at some point. So, I mean, being able to do a lot of these different things. I mean, it's a fun time. It really is. And then of course, I mean, we're gonna be planning another one this coming fall. So obviously, we're gonna fill you guys in as we get closer to it. We have some ideas. We haven't really decided on everything, but it's also going to depend on the schedule for for the upcoming football season at the same time. So,
Well, it also
so
comes down to me because I don't know when the schedule comes out. I mean, we
mhm,
know it comes out in May, but the big factor, and I've said it on previous episodes, is both my siblings are getting married this year. Mike's brother is getting married in July. I think July 11th. It's a Friday. And the
mhm.
same thing is being applied to my younger sister. My sister is getting married in September during football season. I think like
Nice.
the 27th or something like that.
Hmm.
So that's a big key to factor right there is we can't really fully sit down together yet to talk about this because we don't know when what game is going to be played. Because
Right.
if we start planning for a trip, especially with the news about my sister getting married, which I'm happy for her and it's mandatory I'm there, but what I'm saying is that we don't know like when those games fall. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like this past year it was Baltimore. That worked out perfectly for me
Right.
and Britt. We were able to fly out or we were able to drive 4 hours outside of Baltimore and we were there for 3 or 4 days and we had a blast in Baltimore.
Hmm.
Things like that. But if it's like we know some of the opponents next year has been confirmed because the Bills put it out like the weekend of the Patriots game where they lost when they played all their backups.
Hmm.
So to give you an idea, who they're playing, we know that they're playing the Patriots, they're playing the Jets, and then they're playing the Dolphins.
Right.
That's no surprise whatsoever. That's usual. But then they play teams like the Steelers, the Falcons, the
Hmm.
Panthers, the
Yep.
Browns, and the Texans, which on paper that looks really fucking easy.
Right. Right.
I'm just, I'm
So,
just saying.
yeah, yeah. So it'll just depend on what ends up coming up ultimately with the schedule and all that. But I will tell you one thing though, man. If you ever want to see a game in Pittsburgh, that's super easy to do. I mean, that's only what 4 hours from me, or 4.5 hours now, where I moved to. But that is a fun city to go to, and I think you would like it.
I was gonna say it takes me 5 hours to get to Pittsburgh.
Okay, so that's actually not. Yeah, that actually kind of makes sense then, because I mean, you just have to kind of cut through Philly, or you could actually go through northern New Jersey, I think, and you're able to do that. So that's not
No,
too bad.
I see. With me, I would have to leave Long Island, go through the city, and get to Jersey, northern Jersey, like Newark,
Yeah.
and I have to drive past Philadelphia, on the outskirts of Philadelphia, and I would have to drive west of the state because my brother lives in Hawley, which is in upstate Pennsylvania. So I would have to drive out west near Harrisburg, which is in the middle of the state, and then
Right.
straight down to Pittsburgh. So that's where it is. But the
Yeah.
thing is, I can't go to Pittsburgh yet because Britt will not allow me to go to Pittsburgh. Mainly because she's like, we've never been to Pittsburgh yet. We want to wait till the Bills play the Steelers. And I said, that's a fair comparison. But the same thing is, I also want to see the Penguins. So I
Hmm.
firmly don't know, like, what's going to happen there. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, PPG Paints Arena, nice arena. I've been there before. It's been a while since I've been there, but very nice arena. I actually had a chance to be in the old igloo right across the street from where the arena sits now, and that was a cool building to go in. But I will tell you, the stadium itself, formerly known as Heinz Field, is actually easy to get to, which is a big plus. And usually where I've tended to stay has been south of the city, but it's really not bad to get to at all, and it's definitely it's a fun time. They love their teams down there, so they're a fun city to go to. It's a lot like Buffalo, just bigger. is really the way I look at it. So, and congratulations, Pittsburgh, you're actually getting Wegmans because that was announced yesterday.
Yeah, that are they really?
Yeah, they are. They announced it. Cranberry, PA, right next to the Lemieux Sports Complex.
Wow, look at that.
And I know exactly where that is because I've been by there plenty of times. It's right off of I-79, right by the Turnpike. So that's, which actually the one by you is going to be opening, I think, in about 2 months. The one
Sounds
they're building
about
on the island. So you
Loves
got
that.
Yeah, you actually will be able to get some Buffalo stuff there.
That would be nice. I just have to find out what part of Long Island it's in. Then I can make the trip.
Yeah, well, I can definitely tell you exactly where it's going to be. So it is going to. So with where it's going to be, Lake Grove, New York.
Lake Grove, you said. That's near my sister's house.
Yep. So this is our actual press release. It is going to be at the corner of Middle County Road and Moriches Road in Lake Grove.
Yeah, that's about a 40-minute drive from where I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's in Suffolk County.
Yep. So yes, they will be opening, and actually just to kind of give you an idea of exactly when it's going to be opening, because they have announced that. It is, in fact, let me take a look here. Let's see, so it says early 2025, but let's see, future locations. Lake Grove, New York. Oh, you're only a month away. Opening February 26th. And they will carry like some of the Buffalo stuff in there, so yes, you will be able to find some stuff from here.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it'd be nice, but that wouldn't be my go-to place to go shopping for. Like if I'm
Right.
visiting my sister, then yeah, that would be a good thing to do. But Lake Grove, where I am, because I live in Merrick, so that's about a 40-minute drive from where I am.
Yep. So that's what it is. But yeah, February 26th is when they open, and I would say you might want to let it die down a little bit because usually their crowds are absolutely insane for like the first month. So, but it is worth going there if you do decide to go there. Just make sure you get there early.
I would believe that in 100%.
Yeah, so that's how I would look at it. But that being said, we'll see what happens with some more trips and different things coming up. And Brad actually mentioned is like, hey, I've only seen the Sabres play the Avalanche also, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, definitely, yeah. And Brad, next time you come up, let me know. We'll grab a beer. And then to idiot Brendan Dillinger, he's blocked. So
Okay, that
Yeah.
is irrelevant.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, no, we're not going to show our dick or anything on here. It's like, are you that stupid? Watch, he's probably that one moron who probably tried to get into our Zoom feed once, so who knows?
Probably. Oh, yeah, that was the one thing you didn't want to tell the public, remember?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so...
You may
yeah,
as well spell the beans
yeah,
now.
technical difficulties. He basically had some Nigerian guy stroking himself and getting himself off, and that's why we had to basically pull the show the one time.
Yeah, well, let's just say we were both scarred for life.
Yeah, we did not need to see that, and that guy was banned on Zoom anyway.
Yeah, well, he's out of the picture.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
But I think, generally speaking, though, as far as the future of Buffalo After Dark, you can
Mhm.
definitely count us in for season 6. But that's months away. But I will say one thing, and I've told Tom about this. I'm in the early stages of this, so don't get too excited yet, guys. Tom knows. I am going to make a theme song custom made on the banjo that I told Tom I was going to do. Because for those of you who don't know, I'm a banjo player. And I've been playing now for about 5 months. So I've been taking lessons every Monday for over an hour, getting my lessons, and then using my tools for what I've been taught and put that into the art of music and bring it onto the show. That's my goal. My goal is to bring entertainment into the world and bring it into Buffalo After Dark. I also
Yeah.
made another channel because of the expected shutdown of TikTok coming up on Sunday.
Hmm.
I decided to make a backup YouTube account called Banjo Bob. And the premise, and Tom already knows because he subscribed to me already, is the premise is going to be basically where all my music is going to be going. and that's leading to, of course, the intro theme song for Buffalo After Dark going into season 6.
Yeah, so we're gonna make some changes to the show with that coming up. We're gonna revamp the intro a little bit, and I know we're gonna have that new custom theme going on, and actually it's a good thing too because they can't copyright strike us for our own music. So there you go. But we're gonna do some work with that and get some stuff going, and it's gonna be interesting. So nice little, we'll do a little bit of a retool on the intro and all that. But no, good stuff, and lots of sports stuff to come up as we go forward, and plus of course now we've started to expand the show to 90 minutes. So you get a little bit more of us every week now, which is always fun. Now that we're talking more about baseball and actually the Bandits, which the Bandits did beat Toronto this past week, so that was good to see. Lots of fights in that game too, so that was even better.
Speaking of the, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, and yeah, the Bandits remain undefeated.
Yeah, I was gonna say, speaking of baseball, did you see the rumor that came out today about Vladimir Guerrero Jr.?
Well, I know he got a 1-year extension, and that was all through the arbitration. But no, I did not see that.
Yeah, so apparently there's a rumor going around from Mike Rodriguez, who I believe is an insider for the Mets. And let me just be sure that I know what I'm talking about here, just so I don't throw you guys off. So, yeah, here he is. So, Mike Rodriguez is an MLB insider, broadcaster, and foreign analyst for the Cubs in Spanish. And he said that there's been growing speculation that the New York Mets are trying to put together a trade package deal to present to the Toronto Blue Jays in a deal for Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Be interesting to see what happens. I mean, they well, as far as I know, they still haven't re-signed Alonso yet. So,
well, I think to me this is more of a kind of a way of saying, all right, Pete, if you want to come back, this is what's going to happen. We're going to trade for Vlad Guerrero Jr. unless you want to come back.
Right, exactly. So we'll see what goes on there. But of course, they won the big prize with Juan Soto. So there you go. Which I will have to talk to you at some point about possibly coming down for the Subway Series this summer. So
yeah, July 4th at Citi Field and July 5th. Both, and I'm actually off on July 4th this year because it falls on a Friday, so
yeah.
I get off the next day as well. So that's going to be really nice.
Yeah, it'd be fun. It's like, hey, not only have the Subway Series, have my birthday weekend at the same time. So
yeah, definitely. But we also have to work things out because, again, the day or the week after you possibly come down, my brother gets married.
Right.
So
exactly.
There's going to be a lot going on.
Yeah, and then you got your cruise coming up soon. So, I just want to say to Vinny, who is one of our original hosts, and I know he spends a lot of time with his family now. He's going to be coming back for a couple of guest appearances. So, glad to have him coming back and get him back into the fold again. And of course, the tables you see behind me, he created. So if you're ever interested in custom Bills or Sabres tables, definitely. We'll drop a line in the chat at some point or a line on the site, and hey, you can reach out to him and he can build it for you.
Yeah, basically. So it's going to be very interesting, and he's also going to be taking over for me since I'm going away to what's it called? Since I'm going on my cruise to the Dominican Republic.
And the Dominican Republic. So yeah, you'll get to see him a couple times this year, which will be cool. And actually, who knows? He might be on the couch with the table right behind me also. So we've got wireless in this place, which is always good. So we have a nice setup here. But no, I just want to say to Vinny, thanks for filling in on those days. We appreciate it, and definitely looking forward to having you over here again as well. And it's actually funny, when I moved here, he was actually the very first person that was not part of my family that actually came over to the new place. So good stuff. Yeah, with the table delivery and all that. So good to see. But with that being said, we've had a lot of fun on the show over the first 5 seasons and the first 200 episodes, and of course, we do it because we enjoy it. We're not paid to do it. We just like to spend some time and take a look at it from a fan point of view. So to everyone who has been following us, obviously we appreciate you following us every week, and of course keep it to our main pages as well on Facebook. We're certainly glad to do that. Spotify, we're going to get some episodes uploaded on there fairly soon too, so definitely if you miss any of our stuff, feel free to take it on the go. You can always listen there, and of course that's available. But otherwise, here we are, 200 episodes in, and hopefully another 200 more. So with that being said, we'll wrap it up. So, of course, Hanson, you got myself. thanks for watching as always. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we will see you the next time.
Peace.